Thanks so much for being Substack subscribers. As promised, here is the rest of the show.
It feels to me like one of the reasons Flint is not a bigger deal. There's a Republican governor involved, but it's kind of a bipartisan story, right? Like, Obama's, sort of mixed up in at least one episode of this that was pretty ugly. And as you say, it's a nationwide issue that kind of transcends party. The municipal bond bid rigging thing definitely transcends party. The privatization thing transcends party. It feels to me that's a big reason why national media doesn't want to touch this, because it's just you can't commoditize it and aim it at one side or the other. Is that, or do I have that wrong?
I think that's a very fair point and a good point. It's probably part of it. I do think it's, it's a majority Black poor city. So there's an element of the media just cared for, Rachel Maddow went down and then it was over. And then we have Trump to focus on. As Jordan was talking about, like the major focus on Trump took a lot of the media away from everything that was otherwise important. So I do think there's that, but you're right. I mean, there's a lot of Flint residents that we speak to are very bothered by Obama sitting up there when he went to Flint and sipping that water and basically doing his, mission accomplished sort of thing. Like it turns people's stomachs that we've talked to. It feels like, a punch in the gut to them, because it's like, we're here suffering. If this were 2 towns over, even 1 town over, this would have been handled immediately. But because it's Flint, it's a city that there's so much gentrification. There's a huge, foundation that has its paws and everything. Yeah, I mean, it was a Republican governor. Now we have a Democratic governor there, and still nobody cares. And I think you're right. Like both sides, if you're going to call it, the sides, Democrats, Republicans, they are complicit. Neither side has helped. Neither side has done anything. And I don't think we mentioned this. This is the 7th year. We just had the 7th anniversary of the Flint Water Crisis, of the switch to the Flint River. Here we are. And when Jordan mentioned a lot of the local media will only even cover it on the anniversaries, I had to look long and hard on April 25th of this past spring to find any coverage at all, even from local media. So I think you're right. I think there are a lot of reasons why it's not a sexy topic anymore.
It's like a confluence of everything that doesn't sell in media, right? It's a bipartisan. Yes. It's got a bipartisan story. It's complicated, right? There's technical issues. There's scientific issues. So nobody likes that because you have to explain that. It's a bummer, but most of all, it's poor Black people. So that doesn't sell, right?
Yeah. I think there's another element on top of that, which we're finding out when we go out in the field. A lot of these media companies have financial ties to real estate developers, to corporations, to
the foundation I mentioned.
Yeah. For example, in Flint, there is a massive foundation. It's called the Mott Foundation. It basically runs the city. I mean, they control the government officials. And it was kind of bad for business if you're trying to gentrify a city, which they certainly are in Flint and many other cities. A water crisis is kind of bad for business. So they were doing everything they can to prop up Governor Snyder and his administration's messaging that the water was getting better, that things are improving, because it's kind of hard to lure in, investment, nice restaurants downtown, all that, if there's a raging water crisis. And we have found in other cities, we were just in Louisville, we found out that a whiskey heiress in Kentucky gave like $15 million to the local NPR. No wonder they're not covering the Breonna Taylor cover up, because that's another cover up. So Amazon, we just had Jeff Bezos, dick rocket to space.
I thought everybody was kidding about that. It really doesn't.
Oh my God, it's ridiculous. It's so on the nose. Yeah.
I mean, the media will peripherally cover Amazon here and there.
Just the tip.
But they're not just the tip.
They landed. The tip like literally flew off, and that's what they landed in. It was crazy.
Right. but they won't. They will not. I mean, I've been going to the warehouse in Staten Island. Yeah. There's literally people fainting and being carted off on stretchers. There's people homeless that work 12-hour shifts and then sleep in their cars because they're not paid enough. And the media is not covering any of that. And then you turn around and see political playbook brought to you by Amazon advertising all over CNN. So I think there is the element of, all right, it happened a long time ago. Media. I mean, I had an NBC editor told me, and I like this person, that her boss said, yeah, it's just too much resources for something that happened a long time ago. And there's not a big payoff, meaning clicks. So there's multiple layers that really are emboldening this corruption. I mean, the obvious question could be, how did this cover up? Because that's what it is. How did this not get out for 7 years? And it's because the media, the Detroit Free Press, Detroit News, Flint Journal, New York Times as a Midwest bureau, they didn't go and dig.
Right.
Something I keep thinking about is how much all of these things, obviously it's counterfactual, but had Snyder, revealed things earlier, had the media pressured, covered this earlier, I mean, this could have saved lives, right? I mean,
lots, right? We had Legionella, pneumonia. Can you talk about that?
Can you walk us through that?
Basically, the Legionella cases were increasing as soon as a month after they switched to the Flint River. So that's May 2014. So not
just to interrupt super quick, so people know what Legionella is. Yeah. So people know of lead as the Flint Water Crisis, but a major part of what killed people, and many more people are suspected to have been killed by this than have been officially reported. But it's a legionellosis, excuse me if I pronounced that wrong, bacteria is in the water as a result of this. It's like a scientific reason that this bacteria was able to grow more readily because the coating in the pipes was stripped off by this corrosive water. So there was much more Legionella in the water. And when that comes into folks' houses, they can catch that. And it creates this pneumonia-like, it's often misdiagnosed as pneumonia disease that can kill.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And bottom line, I think, sure, he still would have been criticized for allowing the switch to begin with. But if Rick Snyder would have stepped in before his reelection and said, we have a problem here immediately, do not drink your water, do not bathe in this water, he'd probably be looked at a lot more favorably among Flint residents, not viewed as a pariah around the country. But he didn't. And we shouldn't forget, not only did he learn about these things before he was up for re-election, so that was a motivation to bottle it up, but he was also in a time and galaxy far, far away. Before Trump ever ran, Governor Snyder was angling to run for president in 2016. There was a lot of reports about that. So I presume, you have to be re-elected as governor, and then a water crisis wouldn't really help your chances to get elected. So there was political ambitions here, but it's not just about Snyder. He's the easy target. And he is, to me, he presided over this cover up, whether directly or indirectly, but it's just about government in general. This kind of stuff, whether it's Republicans, Democrats, basically we're living in a sea of corruption that is essentially ignored by the press. And that's why it's allowed to continue. I mean, we were just on the road. We're finding that real estate developers are literally sitting on city councils all over the country. Real estate developers are in charge of eviction proceedings during the pandemic. So there's thick corruption. And, I think if you look at Bernie's campaign, this go around, and in 2016, he just would never cross that line to just say it and say, no, Hillary Clinton, you're corrupt. Joe Biden, you've engaged in corruption. It's not literally hand me the bag with $100,000 and I'll vote on this. It's all the things that go into it. And this is a major story, not just about water, but corruption. And I think people should care whether it happened 7 years ago, 7 months ago, because if no one is really held accountable for this, it's coming to a city near you. Because city officials, if they know, it's just like police. I mean, if they know, there will be no civil liability if they kill a black man. Maybe once in a blue moon, a cop will go to jail. But if they know, by and large, they could continue to do what they're doing, cover up crimes, and most police will get away with it. There's no incentive to change your behavior.
It's kind of a textbook story about problems in media, because I mean, one of the sort of clarion calls about issues in news coverage these days is sort of the death of local media. We know about there are thousands of newspapers have died off since the early 2000s. There was just a story blasting Substack a couple of weeks ago saying that we're part of the reason that the local news is dying off. There isn't enough investment in media outlets that cover communities. But as you just pointed out with this story, even local news will avoid local stories if it's not the right kind of story. So in a case like this, unless you have that exact community being affected, they'll blow it off if it doesn't make money. If it's not a money-making story, even the local outlet will blow it off, and it's left to basically to you two to do a story like this, which seems to me a major flaw in the system.
Absolutely. And I think too, an important part of this is that there, in speaking about the difficulties that a lot of local outlets are having financially, well, what was the incentive for them to cover Flint in depth and to do real investigations on Flint and what was going on? There wasn't really an incentive to do that, except for, it was the right thing to do journalistically. Absolutely. It was the right thing to do for people. But going back to what Jordan was talking about, Rick Snyder was planning, or was potentially going to run for president. He and his former press secretary, Sarah Werfel, made this huge trip to China, which I think is important in the timeline. And it was a trip to generate interest in Michigan and bringing companies to Michigan from China. This trip was worth billions of dollars. And so the whole kind of PR spin on that trip was, oh, Michigan's doing great. We've really turned things around. Here's what's going well. This trip happened at the same time that the water crisis was blowing up and becoming known kind of locally, where residents were noticing rashes and were very, getting ill. And there were, some whispers of things going on. This was, I think, allegedly, Rick Snyder knew what was going on at this point, but it had to be kind of covered up because the incentive there, they wanted these billions of dollars, so they couldn't say like, oh, actually, this is not going well at all. Like Michigan is, Flint is in crisis here. So they couldn't bring that to light. And I think that is the same case for these local outlets. If they say, things are going bad here, this is a huge disaster, this is horrible, and our governor is potentially complicit, and his cronies, and all of these people, they're not going to get the funding that they need or want. So because they're kind of sold on the idea that, okay, well, we need to bring in more businesses here to kind of keep you afloat. I mean, it seems like that could be part of the case.
I also think maybe these outlets should stop blaming Substack and start blaming the private equity vultures that are buying up local outlets and then selling them off and bottling up and cutting the staff, bottling it up in debt, and then flipping it for a profit. Because that's really the story of local news for the last, 15 years. So,
right. Yeah. We've all been there. We only have you on for a limited amount of time, but I want to get to another issue that you also were involved with, Jordan, that touches on the media, which is sort of the internet censorship. Facebook is in the news a lot, obviously, this week. There's a lot of discussion about this, but there's an angle of this that almost nobody knows about, which has to do with live streams and whether or not they're moderating footage. Can you talk about your experience and your videographer, John Farina, and what you went through at the beginning of the year?
Yeah. So actually, John was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was working on another story, and he was the first one live for a small channel. We don't have millions of subscribers. I think we had nearly 30,000 viewers live at that time. His footage was the infamous police officer's head rammed into the door in the Capitol that CNN and the rest of them, used from us. We were asked, we licensed the domestic, foreign news outlets. So it was historic footage. Most people probably wouldn't have known the true story without that footage. And we found, I don't know, like a month or so after that, YouTube took down that live stream, citing that we were advancing claims of election fraud. And then bang, 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 they took down 8 other videos between November 2020 and the Capitol insurrection of me on the road challenging Trump supporters who were pushing the election fraud stuff. Our freelance cameraman, John Farina, who covered things and challenged them. All of that was taken down. There was really, you could press appeal, but it's automated and usually you lose. And we push back. And really the only way to get YouTube to change anything is if you raise a stink on Twitter, if it gets enough traction, and that's when they generally will reverse, demonetizing somebody or put a video back up. In our case, they kept it down and basically gave us descriptions like, well, you didn't have a visual component that put a disclaimer that President Biden won the election free and fair. Or you didn't have countervailing views. So I wrote back, well, I don't have a control room of 100 people like CNN does to pipe in visual banners while we're live. We're a small, scrappy news outlet.
So they wanted you to have a crawl, like while you're...
Yeah, they wanted us to have like a little lower third, they call it, on screen that Trump, all his lawsuits have been dismissed and blah, blah, blah. I also said, what do you mean a countervailing view? Do you want my cameraman to literally leave the riot, go find a Georgetown professor and bring him back to say that, all these people are crazy? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? So anyway, they took all those down. And, beyond that, they have suppressed our streams, and I think other people's streams, about Julian Assange. If I put Amazon in a headline, forget it. Nobody sees it. I was on my honeymoon, actually. Jen was live covering the Israel-Palestine latest round. And our views fell off a fucking cliff. And subscribers, we had 100,
dramatic.
Yeah, 115,000 subscribers. After that, we were going live to like 100 people. So there is no accountability with YouTube. Twitter, by the way, is doing the same thing. I've been suppressed.
I want to add to that because I thought this one was an egregious example as well. We had our editor make a compilation of a lot of our reporting from 2020. And, we were quite proud of it. It was like a cool compilation. It was Jordan interviewing, Breonna Taylor's aunt, Bianca Austin. I had some interviews in there with like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, and reporting on the Proud Boys, and what else, Jordan? It was just like a ton of reporting from all across the country, just good stuff. Yep. And so they took it down, and the reason they gave was for harassment and cyberbullying. Which doesn't make any sense, of course. Makes no sense at all.
Apparently, Flint residents who were trying to keep their story in the news. I don't know.
Yeah, there were clips of us interviewing Flint residents as well, and so Jordan was away at that point, so I did the back and forth with YouTube that time, and eventually they had to kind of back down and be like, okay, this was a mistake, because there was no way they could justify it at all. So it's been, and we also preemptively took down some videos that had hundreds of thousands of views because we were so terrified of losing our channel altogether. Right. And so we took down anything that was remotely like what they had already taken down.
And you've stopped doing certain kinds of live content, like on location, right? As well.
On location, we still do all of our in-field stuff, but as far as talking about, I don't know, what have we done, Jordan?
We have a freelancer in LA who said to us like, oh, a bunch of anti-vaxxers are protesting. Do you want me to go cover it? I said,
no.
No, I want you to, but YouTube will possibly take away our channel. And I think there's another element that's not straight censorship, but is certainly totally abnormal for YouTube. After Jen was covering the Israel-Palestine latest war, all of a sudden, when we're going live, like if on your YouTube page, when you're live, you have like the like button and all that. Generally on YouTube, since I've been doing it for 5 years, as more people like it, the viewership goes up. It somehow affects YouTube's algorithm where more people see it if there's more likes and comments. In our case, literally as the likes went up, viewership was going down. So there's like somehow 400, 500 people liking a video or a live stream, but the viewership was going down in real time, which begs the question, are these ghosts liking the video? Because you don't have that kind of drop where like hundreds of people like the video and then stop watching. That's just not, that doesn't happen really. Right. So YouTube literally admitted to us, oh yeah, we freeze the video, we freeze the view count. We freeze the view count to make sure they're quality views, all this bullshit that honestly, I mean, hell, the YouTube CEO openly admitted months ago that if you're a smaller channel in the news category, you'll be less visible, i.e. we will throttle you if you're not authoritative like CNN and Fox News, they said.
Well, so they in the past admitted to us that they had a list, and then they, tried to backtrack that, a list of like outlets that are not okay, are okay and aren't or whatever. Yeah, and I just think, a lot of the stuff that they took down was so historically valuable. Last fall, I kind of did, a mini undercover sort of thing to get into a Proud Boys rally that they weren't allowing any press that wasn't with them, let's say, in. And so, I couldn't, with my voice, push back, or they had literally the Proud Boys had literally beat up a journalist and kicked them out physically before I arrived. So I couldn't, that wasn't a situation where I could press back. So that was, historically important in my opinion. And also QAnon supporters at another event, in the like decompression stage in reporting after that, I of course talked about the misstatements, and not the misstatements, the outright lies, horrible things that these people were saying and stuff like that. But no, that's not apparently valuable to YouTube. They want to erase history.
There's a couple of factors that I feel like are important. One is that, okay, live content is among the more profitable kinds of content you can do, right? For an outlet like yours.
Yeah.
So, so what YouTube is effectively saying is that they want the assumed countervailing opinion or even the explicit kind that a CNN or a Fox, or not even a Fox, CNN or MSNBC, they say that provides. But it might be the same footage that you would do. You're not allowed to do it. They are allowed to do it, right? So essentially, they're driving everybody towards these bigger corporate providers, and they're making it more difficult for independent presses to make money because they're cutting off, with the threat of getting another strike, they're cutting off one of the more profitable ways that you can cover things. Right?
It's actually worse than that, because
absolutely,
yeah, the live stream that they took down of John's footage from the Capitol attack, as I told you, was licensed all over the place.
Oh, so yeah.
The original journalists who got it, their stream was taken down, but the people we licensed it to, CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, on and on and on, their stuff is fine up there. And they didn't have any like countervailing views. So it's complete nonsense.
YouTube left theirs.
Yeah. Up. Theirs was up. And I also think there's another element here. YouTube is also, I think they did this to Ford Fisher, who's another one that's been censored. He's a great journalist. They said there was no there was no context or insufficient context. Well, wait a minute. Is YouTube a publisher or are they a platform? Because if YouTube is dictating or requiring certain context, that's an editorial judgment that does not make you a publisher. It makes you a news outlet that presumably that goes into section 230 and things like that. So YouTube wants to have it both ways, that we're just a platform. We're not, we don't make editorial decisions. They're clearly making editorial decisions. And seems to be all in the direction of propping up corporate outlets. We've seen, by the way, that YouTube went all in with YouTube TV, which frankly has failed. And for those that don't know, YouTube TV, for YouTube to have YouTube TV, they need specific carriage agreements with NBC, ESPN, corporate outlets. So it makes sense to me that they would be beneficial to those outlets by propping them up in the algorithm.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. It's so funny because when the internet first arrived, everybody thought, wow, this is amazing. This is a panacea for independent media. Like all these new voices are going to be able to find audience instantaneously. We're going to be able to support ourselves, all this stuff. And the way it turns out is actually the better you do as an independent provider, probably the more attention you're going to attract from the algorithms, right? I mean, like you're kind of in this like awful sweet spot of doing well enough that you can have an actual business, but they can have a major influence on the decisions that you make as well.
Yeah, well, when we started Status Coup, we knew from the start that having a channel on YouTube is not a business. That is a tool for a business. We knew that, eventually YouTube could go away or YouTube could kick us off or whatever. Same with Patreon, same with Substack. So when we use these platforms, we always have in mind our website has to be, our website, our membership has to be our main thing. And we have to think of YouTube as a way to connect with new people who are interested in our content and our reporting. Same with Substack, same with all of them, because Patreon could be gone in 2 years. Substack could be sold and turn terrible or whatever. Anything could happen. So to have a real sustainable media outlet, that has always been our mindset. It doesn't make it any easier to deal with what YouTube's thrown our way, certainly.
But for us, it's particularly troublesome because our business is based on paid subscribers, and we generally get the biggest increase in paid subscribers when we go in the field. So if YouTube is then suppressing us to the point where it doesn't matter, I could be interviewing Jesus somewhere, and less people are seeing it.
Live.
Yeah, less people are going to see it. Then you're going to have less eyeballs.
People might watch that.
You're going to have less eyeballs to possibly convert to a paying member. So it definitely threatens us.
Also, can you actually talk about? I mean, I guess talk about Rockfin and Odyssey and what other alternatives there are to YouTube, and what you advise for people. I mean, is part of the idea in theory, right, is that if you have multiple places, that if Patreon goes out one day, Substack won't go out the other day, YouTube won't kick you off of the same day, but that could obviously happen. So how do you guys do it on your page?
So my background is in digital marketing and in business. And so for many years, that's what I did. And I saw this happen to companies all the time. Their PayPal would be, suspended for a day for some stupid reason, or this other thing that they liked to use would be shut down, and people would freak out. And so that's what my advice always was, is you have to own like the heart of your business. You have to control that. And so, for example, for our membership site, we have it set up through, it's just on WordPress and it's a plugin. Like, obviously I don't need to get into the nitty gritty technical details, but it accepts payments from Stripe and PayPal. So if either one of those goes out, we're not totally dead in the water. We're also building out on Shopify, which will now connect with Instagram. And so we will have that as a source coming to us. Same with Substack. Rockfin, we joined, well over a year ago now, but we actually didn't go kind of all in until we negotiated a reason for us to do that with Rockfin. I like the idea that you can kind of say what you want there. You can have the premium content, and the folks who go there can get everybody else's premium content. And it's a nice spot. You kind of feel free when you're talking on Rockfin, because you know you're not going to be shut down or it's not going to be removed or whatever. At the same time, Rockfin pays in a currency, a Bitcoin, or not Bitcoin. I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. So a cryptocurrency that they created. So that is unsettling to me because God knows what could happen there. So I've spoken in depth to them about that kind of fear, because as a business owner, and we go out in the field. We don't, we aren't in a studio all the time, and often we're not. And so it costs a lot to do that. So we need our money turned into real, actual US dollars and not Disney dollars, as as our good friend Bill always says. So we have that. We have Substack, and the way that we look at all of these platforms is, okay, here's Rockfin. They have their own audience, their own folks who are on there. Now they can learn about Status Coup. Now they can get into what's considered our funnel. And the funnel is, you want to capture people's email addresses and phone numbers at every single point. Every single point, from Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Always be capturing people's email addresses, always be capturing people's phone numbers. Because once you have those things, if you're gone from YouTube, all right, here you go, guys. You need to find us over here. And, we use MailChimp. If MailChimp goes down, it's all right, because we can download all of those emails and go somewhere else. So you need to have control, like for anyone who's in this space, have control and have multiple income streams, have multiple ways people can find you. Don't think of YouTube as your business. Don't hang your hat on YouTube. Don't hang your hat on anything but yourself. So that is my big advice in the way that we've kind of gone into this.
Wow.
Scary that we have to think that way, but
helpful, and it's like one of those things. I kind of wish I didn't know that. It's very helpful information, but I wish I was ignorant about that.
I know, it's really scary to think about. Yeah.
Real quick, I would add to that. I think advice for people starting in independent media or people already here, I don't think we really do a good job of collaborating as independent media. Everybody kind of lives on their own island and goes live. There's 70 people going live at the same time on the same thing. Not that individuals, shouldn't have their own individual thing, but I mean, we'll be honest. We're out in the field. We were just out in the field for 2 weeks, going through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia, covering homelessness, evictions, a lot of stuff. And it's like, we would go back to the car, turn on YouTube, and it's just like, it's like an episode of Survivor. Who's the last real progressive standing? All this like fighting going on. I don't want to relitigate that.
We talked about that a couple episodes on Substack only.
Yeah. But, everybody likes a food fight from time to time, entertainment, but like, hell, it's often a real struggle to get people to even retweet our stuff in reporting, much less cover it.
Right.
Not just our stuff, but like cover, important stuff that isn't being covered. And I think more outlets should really do more together, whether it be having people on your show, whether it be, specific stories and projects together, because how do you counter corporate media if the independent media is not really organized at all? I don't know if that would be some type of network. I don't know if that would be, just way more elevation of great commentary, great analysis, great reporting. We don't need to only sit there and like read Washington Post stories and react, because there are independent journalists producing original information that could be reacted to. So I think if it's new people starting out, like try to get on other people's shows, try to build relationships with, better known independent media hosts, because I think we could, if it was a little more organized and a little bit more collaborative, we could grow a lot faster.
I think we should have a people schedule.
I agree.
We should,
I like
right?
it.
So it's like, we know, anyone can do whatever they want, but it's best practices. You get you're going to get blacklisted. I'm just kidding. We're not going to blacklist anyone. Not that we have any way to do that, but we should, because it's really annoying when you're streaming at the same time as someone else, especially when audiences overlap and they would watch both, but they can't. So I think we should do that. Yeah.
Oh, the best is when you're live and like your audience starts telling you, oh, Jimmy just went live. And it's like, well, thanks for telling me. No attack on Jimmy.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Go
Why don't you
what
at
he
least
wants.
keep it to yourself? Like,
Right.
I mean, although maybe it's useful for scheduling.
Maybe we could have the one fund the other. Like if we had like Jimmy and Jenk fighting with tridents and like made that a paid thing, and then like spread the money evenly among.
Maybe if we had Jimmy and Jenk fighting with tridents while Jordan and I talk about Flint in front of them, then people would pay attention.
Right, that would be like in the bottom corner.
Right.
Yeah.
Or at least they donate to fate. They could have
double screen.
I mean, we do. It basically is right. Sometimes it doesn't happen this way, but they're basically two sides in this war, right? So at least each of them should give like 10% of their live stream to a YouTuber like of their choosing who's doing a meaningful content thing, like a homelessness
I think that's
stream.
a great idea. Yeah.
Jimmy, Jenk, one of you does it, the other one's an asshole. So yeah.
Yeah, no, they could agree to give that the loser of the thing gives 100% of their take to another. You know what I mean?
But that would probably only be benefiting. See, but if I'm Jimmy, right, and you're Jenk, and I win,
that's the way it has to go.
I don't want Jenk to be funding people on Team Jenk who I don't like.
Right. I just want them fighting harder.
Well, what if the loser has to fund the other ones?
That's true. Yeah.
So then Jenk.
So I guess they have to split it up a little bit.
Right. Or else there's no
I think
incentive.
you're onto something.
Or then Jimmy or whomever would let themselves lose.
Definitely tridents, though.
Definitely tridents, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jen, Jordan, thanks so much for coming on. And
can we just do one? Do you guys have like 1 minute? I think we have to go out in style by watching this one takeoff thing. Just because I know that I want to give the context. We haven't really shown what is a countervailing view of Bezos. He may not be that much of an asshole. Let's see. Let's watch this and see what we think.
And then I want to thank every Amazon employee and every Amazon customer, because you guys paid for all of this. So seriously, for every Amazon customer out there and every Amazon employee, thank you from the bottom of my heart very much.
What a psycho.
Where my heart would be if I had one. Yeah.
Oh my God.
He's like the billionaire Woody from Toy Story.
It is.
Woody's a good guy.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, it's kind of got a Brewster's Millions thing in there too. But I'm dating myself with that. But yeah, no, that rocket is amazing. I think it needs balls though.
Yeah, it definitely does.
In a way, right?
That is a great point. Oh my gosh, what a just an absolute heartless, soulless creep.
It's also kind of
tell
ironic.
Me what you really feel.
Kind of ironic that the rocket is shaped as a dick because so many Amazon workers have to pee, in water bottles. So
they're peeing in water. That's what people are saying. Like maybe from up there he can see like his workers fainting and peeing in water bottles, and maybe he'll get a better view of that from space.
But he might. That might be his like recreation though.
What?
Right?
Oh, just like pointing down to the little people.
No, like watching people not being able to pee. Like, I mean, there was a famous, remember the book Den of Thieves? I don't know if you ever remember that. It was about the Wall Street thing in the 80s. That turned out that Ivan Boesky used to like to watch all of his employees at their desks because he had a mandate about people not being able to go on smoke or bathroom breaks. So he just liked to watch them at all times. So maybe that's what Bezos does.
That's plausible.
Yeah. And final image to really send us home, to rocket us off. Shout out to Victoria Dooley. Michigan doctor, actually, Victoria Dooley. So
oh my God.
There's an even bigger dick inside this thing. And it's an image of the very penile.
It's just amazing.
I mean, it does have balls. So they're just very small balls. Who said they don't have balls, right?
Well, it's 3 balls.
Wait, let's see. Well, you have to overcompensate, I guess, sometimes. Let me see.
Yeah, there's lots of things that you could have made that they could have done to make that a lot funnier, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, they had to know what they were building.
Yeah, they had. Yeah.
It even has like the little line in the top.
I know. I know. The vein.
It's too spot on. It's too amazing.
All right, before this gets out of control.
I feel like people don't say this enough, but Jeff Bezos himself looks like a penis.
That's very true. That's very true.
Can we talk about that graphic?
COVID graphic?
Yeah, it is kind of Republican sucky. It's just Fox News trolling, but like I think they think they're being clever, but it's kind of a cell phone actually.
Right. Here's a bonus Republican suck. Fox News has a graphic that they put up, breakthrough infection rates, and it has 3 panels, right, for people who are just listening. It says 1 in 11 Texas Dems in DC, 1 in 9,842 CDC data as of April 30th. 89,000% higher rate among Texas Dems, 1 in 11. High rate among vaccinated delegation raises questions. So this is because the some Texan Democrat lawmakers, as we mentioned before, decided to leave Texas and go to DC to basically so that quorum wouldn't be achieved for these anti-voting measures. At least 6 of the 55 Texas Democrats have tested positive for coronavirus, and so have 2 Washingtonians.
This has gone up now. Okay.
Yeah, this is from published on Wednesday morning. So they came to fight. I'm reading a Fox News article, but that's how we can best understand their framing anyway. They came to fight a Republican-backed voting bill. Now the group of renegade Texas
Democrats.
That's actually good. Democrats is fighting COVID-19, and the White House is wrestling the idea that their lobbying efforts might have created a coronavirus super spreader event. I'm not sure. Every member who tested positive had only mild sniffles or no symptoms. This is because we've all been vaccinated and our bodies already had the antibodies ready to combat an infection. But having antibodies doesn't stop you from shedding viruses until they've done their job. The lesson here is that, so you like what I did? Look at this. Fox News even inserted this. I'm impressed.
No, they don't have to be dicks about the actual coverage. All they need is the headline.
Right. All they need is the headline and the graphic.
Yeah, they can tell the truth safely in a story like that without having to be.
Oh, right, because all you have to, that graphic is pretty amazing. So basically, they're making it look like you're more likely to get COVID if you're a Democrat who has been vaccinated.
Right. Yeah.
Just in terms of makes you think, raises questions, right? Matt, if God forbid one of us got COVID, that would be like we'd have a 50% rate, 1 and 2.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Get COVID. So high rate among vaccinated useful idiots hosts would raise questions, but we don't have it.
What's the verdict on is that funny or not? I guess I feel like it's not funny ultimately because, there's too many people on that network sort of seriously arguing that you shouldn't get vaccinated or something close to that. Wow. It's almost funny. Remember we had this problem at the beginning of the pandemic, like what were we going to do about sort of the lack of funniness going forward?
Of people dying.
And what we mainly did is sort of blow it off.
Yeah.
Like we kind of just didn't talk about people dying all the time and what a bummer that was.
Right.
We just sort of pretended it wasn't happening for the moment. Well, it's not that we pretended it wasn't happening.
Right. We weren't deniers.
We weren't deniers. We just sort of pretended it wasn't significant enough to affect the tenor of the show.
Right. We had to. That's how people wanted us to not be affected, though.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That is what they needed from us. They wanted serious news about this. They could have turned on any other, not to be glib, but I think enough people were covering it. Not necessarily the important stuff about it.
Right.
And it just became the Russiagate COVID.
So we became an island of indifference in a sea of grimness. I don't know. What was the sea?
Well, it's not just grimness. It was a sea. I don't think we were indifference. We were
over concern.
We were an island of reason in a sea
reason
of
levity, of mild levity.
A sea of mild levity?
No. Our
we were an island of levity, right?
Well, then that's sound like a levitating island.
Yeah, you're right. A jovial island. Saint Jove would be
right. Yeah. Island of joviality.
Well, people just needed to they really needed to
they needed a break.
Yeah. And who were we to not to
exactly.
I mean, that is like as more important than the vaccine no, not more. It was almost as important as the vaccine.
Yeah, it was
the vaccine for freedom, emotional freedom.
Presumptuous of us to do anything else.
Yeah. So you're welcome, America.
Exactly.
In the world. Hello, thank you so much for listening to and watching Useful Idiots. For full episodes and extended interviews, please subscribe at usefulidiots.substack.com. You can subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/usefulidiots for clips, live streams, and full episodes. Also, subscribe to us wherever you find your podcast. Follow us on Twitter at UsefulIdiotPod and use the hashtag UsefulIdiotsPod. Join us Mondays at 10 a.m. for the Useful Idiots Monday Morning Show, where we discuss the Sunday morning news shows so you don't have to watch them.